Good morning, everyone. We continue our series in Rosa de Shabbos, the secret of Shabbos. When Rav Weintraub, Zichrono Livracha's Sefer, on page Lamed Aleph. Lamed Aleph. The title of this essay is Ho'aliyos de Shabbos, the elevations of Shabbos, Chazor l'Shorish, going back to the roots. All right, this is a very difficult class. We'll try to get through this as well as we can and try to at least understand some of the main. And when you get into the deeper parts of this concept of Shabbos, it's a bit abstract. We have to try to tap into what it's saying over here. So let's begin. The first paragraph is easy. Let's start with the halachic issue. Halakha is always something you can touch and feel, and you have a sense of what's going on over there. And that'll make it a little easier for us to enter into what we're talking about in terms of our service of the soul. Yedua, we know, the ochlidu mashkim emlin tarba mikvah. It's a concept of things contracting ritual impurity. For example, if a dead roach, a bug would touch a spoon. The spoon contracts tumah. So how do you remove the tumah? You take it into a mikvah, and the mikvah purifies it. And most things in the world can be purified by a mikvah. What happens if a dead bug touches an apple? Touches touches a peach? Touches a piece of wheat? Okay. Now the law is you can't take them into the mikvah. Okay. What if it touched a glass of water? Okay. Those things cannot be purified by putting them in the mikvah. So you figure the only thing you do is throw them out. But yet there is one way you can still purify them, but not exactly purify them. We'll see what it is. So even though ochlin umashkim, food and drinks, cannot be purified in a mikvah, still we find in the Gemara the following. The ochlin bisriyasin bekarka. If you take food and replant it into the ground, okay, you would take a carrot, and replant it into the ground. Omayim b'hashkosin mikvah, or if you take water and put it next to a mikvah. Let's say there's a mikvah with water in it, and there's a little another container that's adjacent to the mikvah, and there's a hole from the mikvah into that container, and you fill this container with water, and now the mikvah water touches and kisses, as it were, the other water. Mahani lahem tar, it helps to make them purified. Okay, let's stick with the first case. It's easier to understand. But let's say you have sunflower seeds. And the sunflower seeds became tummy. So what do? Just plant them in the ground. When you plant them in the ground, whatever grows out of that will become Torah, will become holy. So the Be'er B'Tshuvas Harid, so one of the early rabbis explains, the kivan the sibas tumasam whom mishum shem ochlim moshkim, since the reason they are tummy and they can't get fixed up is because they're food and drink. B'chiburam lakarka, when they get connected back to the earth, batal mehem shem ochel, they now have been nullified. The name of food has been nullified. It's not food anymore. An apple is food. How do you define an apple? An apple is something I can eat it. It is food. Food can contract tumah. And if it contracts tumah, though, we can't get rid of the tumah. The tumah on the food can never be removed. The apple is tameh, it can never not be untameh. That's a rule. Now, a metal spoon is tameh, take it to the mikvah, it's fine. These are rules. We can't argue why did God make it, that's why He made it. The apple is tameh and will always be tameh. Food can never lose its tumah, can never lose it. But when I put it into the ground, and now it gets attached to the ground, and now all of a sudden it starts to decompose and starts creating some roots and starts connecting into the ground, it no longer is food anymore. It's part of the ground. And then what comes forth from that, then we say, Upanim chadoshos bo'lokan, and a new face has come. Or the same thing, O hamayim, or the water, niyachelik min mikvah, they become part of the mikvah. When you put the water, let's just say, if you put the water in the mikvah, let's say just simply, you put it in the mikvah. So that water now is now part of the mikvah. It's not an 8-ounce glass of water in my cup. It is now part of a much larger body called a mikvah. It becomes part of a mikvah. So the apple is part of the ground, and the water is part of the mikvah. And therefore, when that happens, and from the commentary called the Shita Mekabetzes, Al Hamayim Sheishikum L'Mikvah, water that you put into the mikvah, he says they've come back to their roots. Ulechein Heim Taharim, and therefore they are pure. Pirish. Tehapri Bitchila Hayasarua Bakarka. What happened? Let's go through. The fruit initially was planted in the ground. Gidel v'hispateach. Then it grew and developed. Ukeshechazer hadavar l'shrosha. When it goes back into its roots, nitaher, it becomes purified again. So this is the halachic. Even the halachic concept isn't so easy because we're not used to tumah and tahara. But what he's saying is, just like an apple that is tameh, as long as the apple is an apple, it will always be tameh. It can never be pure. You cannot eat that apple the way it is. But if you put the apple back in the ground, which is where it came from, how did it become an apple? A number of months ago, okay, that's not a good example because it doesn't go on the ground. It goes on a tree. So, it's a tomato. All right, a tomato, a carrot. All right? So the carrot came from the ground. Right? And from the source of that carrot was a carrot seed. I don't know. And then it decomposed, and now it began to grow from the ground. It developed. It now expanded beyond being one with the ground. In the beginning, the carrot, in the very initial stage of its life, was whatever, a little carrot seed that got blended into the ground. And then at some point, I'm not a botanist, at some point the minerals of the ground meshed with the essence of the carrot seed and produced this beginning of a new carrot. Okay? Just starting a new carrot. But it was at one with the ground. And then the carrot developed, became its own thing, and now it's not part of the ground anymore, it's a carrot. What if a dead rodent falls on the ground? Does the whole earth become tameh? Of course not. Imagine you got flat ground and a rodent crawls over the ground. It doesn't make the ground tameh. The ground can't be tameh. So let's say there's this tomato, this carrot growing in the ground. It's part of the ground. It doesn't become tameh. Right? But once you cut off the tomato, now it's its own vegetable. It's its own fruit. It stands on its own. It's separated from the ground. It's susceptible to tumah. And now, once it's tameh, we can't fix it anymore. You can't take a tomato and put it in the mikvah. So there's nothing you can't eat the tomato the way it is. So what do you got to do? You got to stick it back into the ground. Composting. Okay? This is the halachic source of composting. So I guess if you put a tomato, back into the ground, I guess there's seeds, tomato seeds, decomposes, becomes part of the ground again. And then it's going to create a brand new tomato that will be completely torn. That's the halacha. All right? You got a question? What do you mean it's not the same?
It's not the same. If you put it back into the ground, it dies. It's finished.
No,
only the seeds of it.
So the main part of the tomato is still there. The shoresh, the root of the tomato is still there. It's the very same tomato that's been rejuvenated. And now instead of me having to throw the tomato in the ground, throw it away into the garbage, I don't have to throw in the garbage, and then there'll be nothing of that. I replant it in the ground, and then this tomato will now bring other tomatoes. So instead of throwing it away, it can rebirth itself.
And if a dead bug touch it when it's connected still to the ground,
it's not tameh. It's part of the ground. You got to cut it off. It's got to be. It's very complicated. It's got to more than that. It's got to be cut off, and then it has to be moistened. Let's say rain falls on it. It has to be rain that the owner is happy that it rained on it once, And then if a dead rodent falls and becomes saved. That's very common. There's a whole section of
And if a
Talmud.
live bug touch it, it's okay.
It's okay. It's very complicated. The point we need, le'inyanenu, for our concept, you don't have to get so, but to realize in the world of halacha, if a food is tameh, or let's say water is tameh, right? If it goes back to its original source of existence, the tomato grew from the ground. Water comes from wherever the source of water is. Once you bring it back to its source, it loses the state of tumah. Once it is now part of the source, and then it's possible, it has a new face. It's a brand new item now, and almost immediately, once it's connected to the ground, or once the water has mingled with the mikvah, finished. It's tar, and that's all there is to it. Now, of course, that's important to know in terms of halacha, but of course, the pnimius haTorah, the inner point is there must be something very relevant to us. You have to remember, everything in the world is three-dimensional spiritually. Olam, nefesh, shana. World, meaning place, time, and soul. Those are three dimensions. And what happens in one dimension happens in another dimension. These are the three spiritual dimensions. The acronym is Oshon, smoke. Ayin, Shin, Nun. Ayin is Olam, Shin is Shana, Nun is Nefesh. Place, soul, and time. So the fruits over here is place. There's halacha in place, in the physical world. This is the law. If something is tameh, if you put it back to its root, it now goes back to its perfect, pristine beginning state. That's how it started. When this tomato began its life existence, where did the tomato start from? It started from the ground. It was at one with the ground. The very first moment, it was in the ground, and it was connected to the ground, and it was nurturing. The first moment, it was one with the ground. It developed and developed and developed and developed and developed and developed. It became a tomato. Then we cut it off from the ground, and now we cut it off from its source. Now it's liable to get into trouble. Now, it's like this, the life of the tomato. We've chartered its life. Now it comes out of the ground. Now the tomato, has a free will choice, so to speak. Has a choice of the owner what to do with the tomato. He could now serve it as a meal, something like a bracha on it, and it's a good thing. Or he could be not careful, and a rodent touches it. Boom. Rodent touches it. It's tameh. Finished. Can't do anything with it. And therefore, can I ever save it? Only one way to save it. Stick it back into the ground. Stick it into the ground. It decomposes. It now contracts. You had a big tomato. What's going to happen a week afterwards? You look in the ground. What are you going to see?
Nothing. Shriveled.
Shriveled up. It's going to be up to something, a little bit of something. It almost looks like the ground, right? You can't even tell it's there. And now it begins the new cycle when it attaches to the ground. And now it's panim chadashot. It's a new face. It's not a tomato anymore. It's the beginning of a tomato. And now that can create the new tomato, which is going to be pure. Do you understand this? This is the easy part. Right? Doesn't this sound easy? All right? This is the easy part. But you have to realize, there's a whole 1/6 of the entire Talmud talks about these kinds of things. When you will have a Beis Hamikdash, you're going to be very careful, ladies. You think your life's hard now. Much harder. In Beis Hamikdash, you have to, in Eretz Yisrael, there's a lot of rodents all over the place. Right? Wherever you go, there's rodents in Israel. It's a desert. Right? Can you imagine a rat, a mouse,
Yeah, but they're alive.
a chook? What do you call it? Chook? What do you call them in Israel?
If they're alive.
A chook? A chook? Okay, so that's a rodent. A chook. A rodent, whatever, like a cockroach, whatever. I don't know. Right. Anyway, so you have to be careful. You're making challahs. Can you imagine you're making challahs one day, the challahs just rise. All of a sudden, this dead rodent falls on your challah, out.
But how do you know if it's why didn't you not looking at may have just run over a mouse or something like that?
You're right. You have to be careful.
So how can you be
You're right. You can't be.
If the cockroach then
Something under certain
I
circumstances.
want to tell you that I remember Friday night, my mother had guessed maybe 40 people. There was a big pot of fish that she took out, and there was a dead cockroach inside. Inside the closet.
And what did she do? And what did she do?
He drowned there.
What did she do?
I don't remember, but I remember that.
Okay, so this is a part, since we don't have a temple and we don't have
to throw his
it depends if there was 60 times. It's a whole complicated thing.
I don't think my mom threw it.
Anyway, but this is not, when we'll have, Mashiach will come, we'll live this way again. Everything's going to have to be pure. Anyway, but this is we're just using this as an entrance way to understand the parts that are relevant to us. Next paragraph. This is really part of real Torah. This is real halachic Torah that we run our lives by. So the same rules will apply to the inner aspect of Torah and the service of our soul. And this is why Shabbos is unique. Shabbos is in time now, is unique in terms of going back to the source. That's the whole idea. That's what we talked about the last 2 sessions. The idea of when I do actions and they go beyond me, things expand, and then Shabbos we're bringing them back. So now we're looking at this even in a deeper way. So in terms of my soul, so Shabbos is a day where we, so to speak, take the tomato and stick it back into the ground. As we already explained, the power of the action of the soul. What does the soul do? The soul gives instructions to the body. The body does actions, and it spreads out all over the place. What happens on Shabbos? We stop working. And when you stop working, what happens to all those powers that are spread out? They contract. They come back to the soul at the time of the resting. So this is the same thing. What's really happening is, what's going on with your soul? It comes out there as a returning to the root. Bizrias peris bakarka or amayim b'mikvah. You have, by planting fruits into the ground or putting water back into the mikvah with physical things. So too, ubenefesh adam, with the soul of a person, b'shvisaso memalacha, when he stops working, the person goes back to his source, ubizman, and in time, b'Shabbos kodesh, regarding the Shabbos. We do it as we know, midivrei Chazal, the Gimel Zamazet. These 3 areas parallel each other, as I've already explained. What it has in one is in the other. So now let's understand. So how does this work in terms of our souls? That has to be the same concept, that where our soul can come back to its root, and our time can come back to its root. Same idea. We have to explain and see how this works. So what does it mean when we say something goes back to it, the world? Matzari Ramban, let's explain, let's go back a little more to the physical world. The Ramban says, V'yesh reish bereishis, we have Sefer Bereishis, because of Dohotzi mina efes hagomer hamuchud yisodak modein b'mamash. When God created the world, at first there was totally nothing, a vacuum. So what was the first act of creation? What was the first thing God created? From the absolute nothingness came out an element that was extremely refined, that didn't really yet have any physical reality. But it had the power to receive a shape and form and to go from potential to reality. This is the first aspect of physicality. Nikra liyavanim hiyuli. The Greeks called it hiyuli. Okay, so Ramban is saying there was this first matter. First matter. Now, the Ramban didn't have the scientific terms that we have today, right? But what would you say an atom is? Right? An atom, right? It's can you touch it? Can you feel it? Can you do anything with an atom? But it's from that atom is what comes out, whatever physical realities come. So that was that first beginning of physicality, where it's still not been developed, but it's the potential to develop. It's that first, just like in a child, you have that first, the first fertilized egg. It's just a nothing. It's just that first very little beginning, and all of a sudden a whole baby comes out of this. How does that happen? He said, that first one, what's there already? The moment of conception, what is it? How much does it weigh? What is it? It's a little bit of liquid. That's all it is. But in that little bit of liquid, it's got everything to make a whole big human being. So that there was that first, whatever scientific term you want to use, that first microbe, that first atom, where there's really nothing there, with your eye, but it's something that's microscopic, and from that can just evolve and develop. That was the beginning of creation. The root of everything else that will be created. It's this hiyuli before it took on a shape. In other words, it's a physical potential that can take on shape subsequent to its existence. That was that first act of creation. That's the first thing Hashem made. There was nothing. Now there's the first bit of physicality that's so subtle, so refined. The naked eye even couldn't have seen it if there would have been a person looking at it. They wouldn't have been able to see it, but it's from that little thing, had the ability to accept and expand and go on and go on and go on. That's how it was in the physical world. Okay? Now, so just like you have that in the physical world, it's got to be the same thing in soul and in time. So what is this power of hiyuli when we apply it to soul and to time? Just as the Jerusalem Talmud explains the word bereshis. How does the Aramaic translation of the word bereshis fit? How do they translate it? Translate b'chuchma, with wisdom. Chen Ramban also brings the words of the Targum. Now what is chachma? We talked about this last week. There's many aspects of intelligence. The first level of intelligence is chachma. What is chachma? Pirish da chachma eino hasagas davar muskal bavad. Chachma, wisdom, is not really yet at the stage of understanding anything. There's chachma and bina. We don't realize how subtle what's going on in our minds. You just think I have wisdom. There's a lot of steps before you really think you got any wisdom. There's chachma, bina, and das. 3 steps. Chachma is the very first step where you don't really have anything clear at all. It's that first ability for the mind to be able to process what's going on. That's like the hiyuli of the mind. In other words, there's got to be inside your brain the mechanism that enables you to process what's going to happen, and it just gets that very first bit of information before the rest of the information came. It's, we'll call it a schema that lays the groundwork for subsequent information that will now be processed and make sense for you. Okay, so he says that's that first part, chachma. Right? It's not really understanding something yet. It's that very first refined mass. From that comes all the images of heaven and earth and all that's there. People can have brain damage. It can affect the area of chachma, so that even though the area of bina is working, but it has no chachma from which to draw from, and it has nothing to work. It's not what we call this. We call it audio processing. Special ed people have all the right words for this, right? Their processing skills are weak. What does that mean, processing skills are weak? Well, it means when they look at things, they see them not in a way that other people see it in order to process the information properly. So that processing ability is this. What is it? What do you know when you have it? I don't know anything, but I got the ability to know. Do you understand? That's why you have all these learning disabilities.
That's the insight.
Well, it's before that even before that. It's how you're able to process, the ability to process information. That is the chachma. That is that first stage of wisdom. You can't learn that. That's not it's hard to learn that kind of chachma. You with me? So that's that first, that's before you really know anything. Shemini Yatzuk, okay. V'cheinu b'nefesh, it was on. So it is in soul, and so it is in time. Okay, so Umash Shenikra Chachma, next page, Binyanim. What's called Chachma in those areas? It's that initial mass that is able to carry all the pictures. You having that strength as well. When you go back to the source, He can now make a brand new face. Like we find things growing on the ground. All right, let's continue. You got to read a lot more, because a lot of double talk, a lot of extra words here. But you have this concept. So we already are dealing with. You have the initial creation, where you have always this idea of a root, the very essence of the root. The initial creation, the very first hiyuli. From that, everything can come. You have chachma, that's also called chachma, wisdom, that first ability to process information. Okay, let's continue. Amar Rabbi Seinu, our rabbi said the following. The Bavo Shabbos, when Shabbos comes, this is part of the Zohar, Kol dinin misabra minei, all judgments pass away. God doesn't judge anybody on Shabbos. All judgments are gone on Shabbos. Klomar. Even though during the weekday, most of God's interaction with the world is by judging us. On Shabbos, all that power of judgment kind of spreads away and doesn't exist. That's what the Zohar says. There's no judgment on Shabbos. Why? We'll explain it as based on what we said before. But let's preface a words of the rabbis. The words say, in the beginning, God intended to create two people, but at the end he only created one. Right? What does that mean? Well, initially he wanted to create two people. Well, no, two people, a man and a woman. Right? But at the end, what came out of the ground? One. So what does that mean? What do those words mean? He wanted to create two, but only one came out. What does that mean? So, Kosav Agra, the Vilna Gaon explains, to Allah Machshava, what does that mean? What does it mean? Allah b'Machshava. It came to his mind. What does it mean when we say God? God, it came to his mind. It's not like, first I thought I'm going to make two, and I'm going to make one. It doesn't work that way with God. God doesn't change his mind. What does the word Allah b'Machshava mean? He says, who? We're talking about the development of the wisdom. It's one of the ways that God conducts his affairs in the world. With this attribute, is rooted what will ultimately be two. In other words, yes, God wanted to make two. He will make two. But the beginning of two starts with one. That's what he means to say. In other words, whatever Hashem made, right, that there is still going to be a beginning that is a simplistic beginning. Okay? And in other words, it always really starts with one and eventually becomes two. What does that mean? We'll see in a minute. That there's the root, that there will now be free choice into the world. In other words, you have a root. The root is always the beginning. The beginning is always one. Right? Two, by definition, means more than one. And a lot more than one. Two already means there's this way and there's that way. That already expresses the concept of choice. One, this is it. Two already is a choice. So we'll see that when God created man, he originally wanted it to be, he wanted it to be two. He wants it to be two. But what came out? First came out one. Why? We'll see. The whole idea of having a free will choice, what is it based on? Okay, so the person has a choice to act in this world. What does choice mean? I have a choice. Either Tenuas Elokim, I could do something that strengthens God's realm, or the opposite. The rock that gave birth to you have weakened. In other words, you have a free will choice to strengthen God's realm, to not strengthen God's realm, to do the will of Hashem, to not do the will of Hashem. That is the way God wanted us to be, working in this world. And now there's sort of like a partnership with God in the creation of the world. Because now you can partner, you can decide you want to strengthen God's world, you're a good partner. If you want to wreck up God's world, you're a bad partner. When there's free will choice, there's reward and punishment. Because if you have the ability to do an action, you can fix something else and profit, or damage and get punished. It's the whole idea of reward and punishment. Something and its opposite. Urak is only V'hispashtus hadvarim, when things have spread out, min hachachma va'elach, from the chachma stage and beyond. But at the beginning stage of chachma, it's only good. What he is saying is like this: the root of what God has created is only good. Hashem only creates good. It's all good. What Hashem makes is good. The purpose was good. There was one purpose for creating man, to give him pleasure. And what's man going to do? Man's going to do what he's supposed to do. And that was that initial chachma, the initial idea, the first cut, the root, the source. The whole source of all this is Hashem loves us. Hashem wants to give to us. Hashem created a being who could do everything Hashem wants us to do, and that's what we should be doing. But as that first reality expands, then the what do you call it? The possibilities expand. As it gets further away from the root, further away from the closest to Hashem, and things become a little bit expanded, then options develop. And as options develop, a person has a choice to do things properly or to do things not properly. So that's what the Gemara is saying. That God wanted to create two, but it came out one. What does it mean it came out one? The first level of reality is an undeniable reality that Hashem created that first reality. Whatever that first moment of existence, it's clear reality connected to Hashem, and it's only good. As it develops and goes further away from Hashem, the possibilities become more than one, and therefore, now it looks like I've got options. I can do what Hashem wants. I cannot do what Hashem wants. I can get rewarded. I can get punished. Now that is a new perceived reality because of the spreading out that's happened. But the truth of the matter is, that's not the core of the human being. The core is what he started off with. And that's why we say in Pirkei Avos, based on the pasuk in the Navi, it says, Va'amcha kulam tzadikim. Your nation are all tzadikim. Everyone in this room is a tzaddik. I said in the Parsha class as well. This is the Kabbalistic shop behind it. How can you say everyone's a tzaddik? What do you mean? This guy's a big Rasha. He does all these averos. So why is he a Rasha? He's a Rasha in the expanded form. If he would be collapsed into the unified form, the form that constricts itself and comes back, just like the fruit. You have this fruit. In the very initial stage, when the fruit was little, it was part of the ground. It's part of the ground. And the ground can never be tamei. A rodent can crawl over the ground, nothing. You can't damage the ground. But then it developed, and developed, and developed, to the point where it's not connected to the ground at all. It has a whole separate reality than the ground. It's called a fruit. Now a fruit, good things can happen to a fruit, bad things can happen to a fruit. We would hope good things would happen to a fruit all the time. But what if a rodent falls on it? A bad thing happened to it. Oh, it's a Russia. It's a bad fruit. It's a bad apple. Right? Nothing we could do about it. It's finished, gone, goodbye, no hope for this, throw it in the garbage. So you have, that's the expression, a Jew could be a bad apple. So the Jew's a bad apple, The Jew, before the little baby came out into the world, the Medrash says, the Malach tells the little baby, you be a good little boy or girl, and you do what you're supposed to do, and you do the will of Hashem, and don't become arrogant, and you make sure you keep kosher, and you make sure you do this, and yes, I'll do it, right? That's the point of one. That's the first beginning. And all of a sudden, baby comes to the world, it starts to develop. All kinds of, and it becomes its own thing. And with its own thing, now there's possibilities. Possibilities can do good, possibilities can do bad. So what if Chas v'Shalom do bad? So what do you do with the person? I know what. Throw him out. He's junk. He's a bad apple. No. The answer is, we compost him.
That's right.
We compost the Jew. What do you mean? We bury him into the spiritual ground. The spiritual ground is we have to bring him back to not to the place where he's a human being, where he can make free will choice and all these things. We have to bring him back, all the way to the very, very beginning, where there was really no free choice, no nothing, just being next to Hashem. And at that point, he's a panim chadashos, he's a new face. He's not the free will choosing person who chose to be bad and is a bad apple. We retract him all the way back. We stick him into the ground, as it were, and that's not so far-fetched when a person dies. That's all part of that as well. The person, if he's a tzaddik, a real holy tzaddik's body does not decompose after he dies. There's no need to. It was never a bad apple. But there's a Vilna Gaon, a lot of people don't. But normal people who do Averos, they need to decompose. Why? Because they got to go back to the ground. Go back, just like a fruit has to go back into the ground, because you're going to come back one day. When the resurrection happens, you're going to come back, and we don't want that ugly, tainted body. We're going to see a panim chadashos, want to see a new face. Go into the ground, even on the physical level, be decomposed, and what will come out will be something different. So the same thing you find over here. That's why we can say, Va'amcha kulam tzadikim. All your people are tzadikim. What do you mean? They're not tzadikim. The answer is, if you'll retract the Jew back to his source, in his source he's a tzaddik. There's no question about it. So that's in the area of soul. Okay, now on the next paragraph, last paragraph on page Lamed Beis. And once something comes back to its root, it now can be renewed as a new face. So now the same thing came to Shabbos. It's the same thing with Shabbos. What's Shabbos? Now is in time. Everything in the world comes back to its root. When it comes back to its root on Shabbos, then on Motzei Shabbos, it can come back with a new face as well. And now Sunday can look a lot better than Friday did. Right? And that's why that's why the whole image of judgment and punishment doesn't exist on Shabbos. Hashem only punishes when a person has expanded to the realm where he has choices, and then he made wrong choices, or for that matter, correct choices, and Hashem judges positively or negatively, but that's because you had a choice. But on Shabbos, when everything contracts back to its original state, it goes back to the state of its root, which is called Chachma, Shishar Shakol, which is the root of everything, because the pasuk says, HaChachma me'ayin timtza, Chachma comes from nothing. The Arishon Shatza min ayin, it's the first thing that comes from the nothingness, and it's attached to that. When the judgment comes back to nothingness, the evil that was stuck to it before in its expanded state leaves, and that's that's the reason for the punishment. You get a new face, because in the root there is no existence of evil. You hear what's going on over here? When a person does something wrong, why does God have to punish him? Because right now you are thinking you have wrong thoughts, you have wrong ideas, you're doing wrong things. That part has to get fixed. The only reason Hashem punishes us is to fix us. That's all. If it's broken, you have to fix it. I went and did an Avera. Well, how could I do an Avera? There's something wrong with me. Why is something wrong with me? Because of the expanded version of my conscious reality, there seem to be very attractive choices that existed that were against what Hashem wanted. So I did such a thing. Hashem doesn't want me to live in that reality. Hashem has to punish me. Right? So what happens if I can go back to the point where the evil no longer appears to be as an attractive thing? Then what does God have to punish me for? That's important. A parent has to realize the best way to punish a child is not to punish a child. It's to bring him back before the expanded reality. Bring the child back to who he is. And then he'll realize that there's never really an option to do something that's so bad. That's the best discipline, right? Remember long ago we said the story with the farmer, right, who insulted the king, and then the king brought the farmer to the palace, and he saw how great the king was. Yeah. Right? The king didn't have to punish him. He just made him aware of what the king is, and now he knows he has no choice. What do you have to punish him for? What do you have to punish somebody for? Just let them see what the reality is. You see what the reality is? Evil really is nothing. So when a person comes back to his roots, the deep, deep part of his soul, it's ridiculous to do something bad. It just doesn't exist. So why does Hashem have to punish you? That's what it means. The judgments are suspended on Shabbos. Because if we're in touch of this reality, we come back to the source of who we are. The source of who we are only knows to do good, because we're so close to Hashem. And therefore, what does Hashem have to punish us for? That's why all the judgments are suspended, positive or negative. Because you don't get rewarded for doing a good choice if there's no choice. If I'm good but there's no choice to be good, I don't get rewarded either. So Shabbos brings us back to that point of seeing things in the contracted state. It's like putting the tomato into the ground. The tomato now, what happens? It decomposes. It's got no choice to become tummy or tar. It's just part of the ground from which it came from. So the same thing happens to our soul. It goes back to its original root. This is what the mystical term is always used, aliyas to Shabbos. Everything is elevated on Shabbos. It means to get elevated. It goes back to its source, and it identifies to its true reality. And in that true reality, you now have a new face. The old face was, I can do whatever I want. The new face says, there's only one reality, and I'm right next to it, and that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's only good. That's what he's saying. And that's what he says in the brackets. The Chachma hi breirus she'ein sovelas irpul. Chachma is clarity that doesn't take any confusion. Say to wisdom, you're my sister. Meaning to say, if something is clear to you, just as clear as a man is not allowed to marry his sister, that's clear. If the knowledge is that clear, that's real wisdom. And any confusion, any hiddenness, onesh v'ra, that will bring punishment. Who irpul b'bihirus has a lack of clarity of the eino novado, there is no other existence other than Hashem. Can't go to the realm of Chachma. In other words, Chachma is that very first moment, that first aspect of intelligence. Chachma is clarity, as clear can be, because it's right next to Hashem. The only time you ever get punished is when you things weren't clear and you made a mistake in judgment. So now this is really cool, because now you begin to appreciate what's going on Shabbos and what's not going on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're really not supposed to have any free will choice on Shabbos. The real Shabbos. If you've put yourself in the right place, right? Now, this doesn't happen by itself. You have to do the things to put you in this place. But I'm just telling you, this is what the supreme point of Shabbos is. The Jew is back to the beginning of his existence. The beginning of existence, there is no free will choice in the beginning of your existence. You're at that first point, that very first point, the first microbe of spirituality. It doesn't double and triple and expand, and now it gets confused. It's far away from the source. You're coming right back exactly to the very starting point. At that starting point, there's no free will choice. It's all clarity. Now you're going to understand something very beautiful. There's a lot of prohibited activities on Shabbos. A lot. And a lot of them revolve around a concept called borer. Borer, it's one of the famous ones. And there's many that are, borer, meraked. There's a whole bunch. Borer basically means separating. Let's say you have a piece of fish with a bone. Okay, now, how do you eat it? How do you eat it on a Wednesday? On a Wednesday, you know what I do? I pick out the bones, I separate the bones, and I eat the fish. That's what you do on Wednesday. That's fine. On Shabbos, you can't eat that way. Because you are doing borer. You're separating. You're supposed to just go right for the fish. You could take the fish, leave the bone behind. You cannot take the bone off. That's very complicated. I don't want to get into all the details of this.
You prepare something before Shabbos.
That's why we have gefilte fish, you see. So you don't have to. That's why. Why do we eat Jews eat gefilte fish? Stamazoi? Because it tastes. Because it's not just cute. It's not just, that's an interesting Jewish tradition. It's our heritage to eat gefilte fish. When you eat gefilte fish, you have to understand why it's gefilte fish and why on Wednesday it was fried fish. On fried fish, you say, let's look at the food on a spiritual level, just as a mashal. The meat of the fish, that's the good stuff. The bone's the bad stuff. Now, if you're a dummy, what do? You eat the bones. A smart person says, no, I'm not going to eat the bones. I'm going to push away the bones and eat the fish. But there were bones. There were bones. The world of Wednesday has bones in it. Now, that's just an allegory to life. Obviously, there's many situations, that we consume situations in life. You don't only consume with your mouth, you consume with your mind. You can look at, let's say you're in the street, you could look at a tzaddik, and you could look at a woman who's not dressed modestly. Don't think when you're looking at a woman or a tzaddik, you're not consuming. You're still a consumer. You're consuming it spiritually. So during the week, you do borer. What do? I push the not nice picture away. That's not on my screen. I push it away, and then I go to the tzaddik. I have to make a choice. During the week, you have to make a choice because there's a lot of options, because everything's expanded. So when I eat fish, I take away the bones and I eat the fish. But you'll see there's many activities, not just one. It's borer, there's sifting the big things, and then the small things, and must be 5 or 6 different malachos involving with sifting. The whole idea of making bread, that whole process, there's so much, first you separate, you winnow. What's winnowing? You've cut the wheat, right? You winnow. You throw it up in the air, and the wind blows off the chaff from the grain, right? Then you got the grain, and then you got to thresh it, right? And that pops the grain, the kernel of the grain, out of the other part of the grain. You understand? That's the second type of separating. Then then when you bring it to the sifter, you got dirt and this and that. Now you got to sift it again to get rid of the dirt. And there's a lot of processes here. There's all these malachas, but they're all involved one thing: separating the good from the bad. So on Shabbos, you're not allowed to do that. Why? Because on Shabbos, you're coming back to the root. When you're at the root, there is no bad. There is no bad. If you come back to who you really are, what do you mean there's a pretty woman to look at? What are you talking about? That doesn't exist. It's not an option. Because when you're coming back to the one, coming back to the very beginning, it's right next to the clear reality. What are you trading me a cup with these crazy things? So we play it out. Do you understand why we're eating on Shabbos in a way to show that I don't separate anymore?
Does that apply only to fish or to meat? Or
anything. It could be anything in the world. Let's say a watermelon. You can't pick the seeds out of the watermelon. Either you're going to cut around and take the watermelon, leave the seed behind, put the whole thing in your mouth and spit out the watermelon seed. You cannot separate. Now again, a person would say, boy, this is crazy. Why is God doing this to me? But the answer is because that's what the essence of Shabbos is. It's, and God is doing the same thing too to you. He's not, he's not judging you either today. You have to, when you're separating, you're making judgments. We have to make judgments every day. Should I do the right thing? Should I do the wrong thing? You know what? They're usually very mixed, intermingled, right? Some of you're talking to somebody, you're doing this, the person hurt your feelings, you're upset, they're upset, you're upset. What should you do? Well, you could either, be a tzaddik and say, one second, be a tzaddik and say, well, I'll let it go.
So what's all the people?
Or, no, I'm not going to get by with that. I'm going to tell everybody about this. It's going to be lashon hara, blah, blah, blah. So it's so intertwined. If things were, if good was here and bad was here, it wouldn't be so hard to see the difference. Right? When before Adam sinned, it was like this. Good was here and bad was here. Bad said, hi, I'm bad. And Adam says, okay, I know to stay away from you. You're not even in my game. After you ate from the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, the tree of knowledge, good and evil, it was a tree that the roots of good and evil intermingled, and when the fruit came out, it was a mixture of good and evil. And everything you see in the world has a mixture of good and evil. And now everything you do, you got to be careful. Am I doing it only good? Is there a little evil in what I'm doing? I got to be careful, and I got to this, I got to that. And you got to be doing borer all day long. Because the evil looks to be just as good as the good, and the good looks to be just as bad as the evil. That's why we make mistakes. Most of our mistakes, most people in this world really, really, really were very nice people. We're just very confused, and we don't know how to read what's in front of us. That's really what's going on over there. That's the whole idea. I won't forget you. I just want to finish this. But that's the whole Yetzer Hara's job, is to make good look bad and bad look good. And it's all mixed up. Now, what your job is to do borer. Now really look and see. See, there's a bone over there. Get it out of there. You don't want that. You want to eat the fish. What happens if you eat the fish with the bone? You'll choke. Right? You want to do a mitzvah. You want to give tzedakah. But the time you're doing tzedakah, you're embarrassing the guy. So then what you choked on the mitzvah. right? That's where the problems are, because it's so confusing. So, but that's why is it confusing? Because it's spread out. It's gone beyond right up next to Hashem where things are clear. The fruit has been detached from the source. If it's detached from the source, you can do no harm when it's in the source. Right? But once it's detached, now there's options. There's options, there's confusion. So we got to bring it all back. Bring it back into the ground. Just like bringing it to the ground, your neshama goes back. Shabbos brings everything back real close to Hashem. And when it's real close to Hashem, Hashem doesn't have to judge you at all. There's nothing to judge anymore. It's clear. And the person sees that clarity. What does Hashem have to punish you for? It's all clear. And therefore it plays itself out in the very food that we eat. And every time you look at gefilte fish, you should never look at gefilte fish the same way. As I'm eating a food, I eat foods exclusively that do not need any breira, clarification. Why? Because I don't need any clarification. I should be gone back to that level where I think the way I eat. And the food, at least we make everything physical parallel what's going on spiritually. You understand what I'm saying? Normally, during a weekday, you have a real good, some of these really big piece of fish with a lot of bones, you have to be like an expert. Us younger people would destroy such a fish, but there are older people who are like trained how to eat a piece of fish with the bones, and they can mamish go through it. They deep while they're eating. That's a skill, that's a talent. But on Shabbos, even the most talented person, on Shabbos you just have it the way it is, and you don't have to do any borer. That's not your job now. It's not your job to decide between right and wrong. It's so clear. It should be so clear. There's no question. Now, thank you for being so patient. I just wanted
Rabbi, what happens if you prepare the fish on the Thursday and take the bones out and then serve it on Friday?
That's fine. For sure, that's fine. That's perfect.
You have skin on
it. Doesn't have to be gefilte fish, but it should be deboned fish. The whole point is that you don't have to separate. You want foods that don't require separating. Now, it's very complicated. It's one of the most complicated laws. And when you teach the laws of Shabbos, there's some very complicated ones, and Bor is one of the most complicated. There's so many conditions and so many rules, but you can begin to understand how much mysticism is behind all those complications. If it's so complicated, it must be telling you that the spiritual part behind it is just as complicated. But I'm saying, you get bogged down. You have to remember, when could I do it? How do I eat it? What if it is mixed up? You have to eat it in a way that it looks like you're not separating at all. You're just taking the good right away. And it's very complicated laws, but it's not the point to learn that now. I just want to let you know and appreciate why there are such halachas on Shabbos. Everyone thinks, the Shabbos is restricting me. I can't even eat a piece of fish the way I want to eat a piece of fish. The answer is no, it's freeing you. It's freeing you to realize that this is the way you're supposed to look at life. The way you look at life, life in Olam Haba is a gefilte fish. Meaning to say, it's clear. You don't have to separate anymore. Will you get rewarded for eating a piece of gefilte fish? What do you mean? There was no free will choice. There's only good stuff. Now, when you eat a good piece of fish with tons of bones, and you don't need any bones, you deserve a reward. Right, so that's the idea. Yeah?
What about the people that die in Shabbat? There's no judgment in Shabbat.
A person who really understands what's going on sees there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. I agree. Fine.
There's nothing wrong with it. What do you mean? He's going right into Olam Haba.
Good.
What could be wrong with that? You get a direct flight.
I wanted to
direct. There's no Gehenna on Shabbos. On Shabbos, Gehenna is turned off. There's no Gehenna. Even the rush was in Gehenna. On Shabbos, the air conditioning goes on. That's a good thing to realize. If a person has anyone who has parents who aren't alive, and we never know who's going to get their Gehenna. I don't know. I'm not to speak. One thing's for sure, it'd be a good idea. You said the question is, when does the fire go back on? When does Shabbos end? You know what it ends? No. When your kids end Shabbos.
When what?
When your children end Shabbos. That's when Shabbos ends up there. Let's say you were a good Jew, but you made mistakes. So you got to get a little Gehenna, right? Then say, Shabbos is coming. So all of a sudden, what goes up in Shemaim? So they go, you, Chaim Yankel, Shmerel, Rivka, Rachla, you can leave. You can go to the air conditioning. He says, what about me? Your kids didn't make Shabbos yet. It's not Shabbos yet. Because you know why? Because you taught them that money is the most important thing. Listen. No, you can't do that early. It says, well, why? The other people, they made Shabbos half an hour early. Why? Because their parents taught them how important Shabbos is. You taught your children how important making money is. So they're going to wait to the very last minute to bring in the Shabbos. So guess what? You can stay in Gehenna till the last minute too. And then when do they go back? Then, but eventually everybody gets out, right? But then the question is, when do they have to go back? So the guy who got out the last, usually the guy who's going to go in first. Because look, my kids, it's 9:26 according to the leading opinion. Shabbos is over. Boom, you can go into Gehenna right now because your kids are already back to going to their Gehenna. And then the one says, the Rabbeinu Tam says it's 90 minutes after the stars have come out. So that guy's parents can go to Gehenna a little bit later. Realize your life is only what you value it as, right? So I'm saying, if a person dies on Shabbos, there's no Gehenna. At least then, maybe afterwards he's going to have to visit, but at least he's going there. So that's all good. Okay, now let's skip the next paragraph and let's move. Okay, what are we going to do now? Okay, let's go to the next one. We're on page Lamed Gimel. Chazaras hanefesh hashasha b'chochma Eden. So it is with the soul on Shabbos. Okay, we've talked about the soul. The soul, everyone's soul goes back to its first bit of energy. What was your soul when it first God created it? That's the real power of Chachma. Wisdom, and it becomes revealed from the depths of the hiddenness of the soul. It illuminates and makes the person brand new. So let's explain what this is. But that's what happens. On Shabbos, your soul also gets stooped into the ground, as it were. It starts all over, and the purity of that soul comes out on Shabbos. Now let's see. After we say Baruch Hu, and before the Shema, one of the lines we say is Oineg Kara Liyom Shabbos. Hashem called Shabbos Oineg. Oineg means delight. That's not an attribute of Shabbos. It's a name of Shabbos. Another name of Shabbos, aka, is Oneg, delight. In our world, our closeness to Hashem, is because we have Hashem's name on us. We're Yisrael. Yisrael has Hashem's name, El. We are attached to His name. As the Apostle says, you are attached to Hashem, and you're alive. We try to achieve in this world a status called dveikus. Dveikus means cleaving to Hashem. Okay. And that's what we try to achieve. But in the future, it's going to even be better. The dveikus, the cleaving, will be elevated more. The Pasuk says in the Navi, what will happen when the Mashiach comes? It says then, Oz tisaneg al Hashem. Then you'll take delight on Hashem. Not dveikim bit, not attached to, but delighting on. The kol hagiluyim shakirva dveikus v'mazeh ba'avir v'yira adayin ein zeh Hashemis. Any closeness you get to Hashem in this world is not the perfect closeness. Ad olam haba, till you get to olam haba, she'oz nisaneg al Hashem. Then we'll delight on Hashem. Doneg yeshbo hechalos hayecholos legalos losses shleimus hakol. Because that delight has the ability to reveal and to carry a total perfection. In other words, you're not next to the perfection, you're in the perfection. You're not next to Hashem, you're in. It's not the plant that's growing out on top of the earth, it's in the earth. You're going back right to the source. Lisanik al Hashem. Your mamish this. Not more than this. This isn't even good enough. You're like submerged. You've melded into one. Al Hashem. Part of Hashem. That's how close to the root you go. We know that wisdom incorporates everything. That's why if you look at that paragraph by right after Baruch Hu, we keep saying the words Hakol Yoducha v'Hakol Yishabchu v'Ein Kodesh Hashem Hakol this. Keep saying the words Hakol, everything, everyone, every. What's that? Because that's wisdom incorporates everything. And therefore, many places the rabbis call Chachma the word Eden. Chachma is Eden, is wisdom. Interesting. Eden means delight. Now listen to the very beautiful Hebrew extraction. Eden sounds like what other word? Well, no, Gan Eden, but Eden is the word Adayin. Adayin.